Great. So we've been talking about our MVP, our angle of attack, and how we progress through it incrementally. So this progressing through it incrementally, we spoke about how we tackle it in iterations, 2 weeks upon 2 weeks upon 2 weeks, fighting these battles on a risk-based approach as we go through our backlog. So how do we go about giving sort of, socks. Hi. So we've spoken about defining our MVP and our risk-based angle of attack through it, our battle plan, our invasion plan rather. So how are we going to go? We also spoke about how we're going to tackle this invasion battle by battle by battle, setting us up in every 2 weeks, battling through this complex problem space. And that we do this incrementally, and we may have a whole bunch of features, but that we break these features down incrementally, doing what is risky about this one and getting the risk under control, and then maybe not doing the rest, maybe doing the risky parts of another one. And as we progress and get risk under control, we work our way through until we come out the other side. So for these 2 week iterations that we're doing, what are we specifying? Are we specifying clear instructions that we want people to do? So folks, team, the next 2 weeks, this is what we're expecting of you, and this is what we need you to do, and these are the details of how we want you to do that. And by the end of these 2 weeks, we are going to make sure that you did what we instructed you to do. Is that really what the point is? How are we going to go about this? Well, let's see.
That sinks the ship. These torpedoes are big deals. You don't want to drop them, obviously. Here we are loading the torpedo. We're in Japan. That's the green thing on the bow of the ship there. Before we would do an evolution like this, we'd have what we called a brief. You do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. It was just another way of telling people what to do. And finally realized, you know what, we're telling people what to do. We got to find all these rituals, traditions, patterns, and habits of behavior where we're telling people what to do and stop them. So we stopped doing briefs, and we got better than any other submarine for loading torpedoes because what we did is we activated thinking.
Interesting. Activated thinking. That was a retired Navy captain, David Marquet. And his story is really interesting, and he captured this in his book, Turn the Ship Around. Really well worth reading. And what it really is about is that David was trained by the Navy. He was told that you're going to take command of a submarine, and it's going to be this model of submarine. And he was trained for a year or something on exactly how this submarine works. And he had so much knowledge about all of this. And just, I think 2 weeks before he was supposed to take up his commission with this specific submarine, he was told, due to changing circumstances, you will now take command of a different submarine, a completely different model submarine. And he was shocked, stunned, dismayed, because he didn't know the details of how this submarine works. So if we think back to jobs to be done, certainly on a submarine, there are pretty standard jobs to be done. And for these jobs to be done, there are pretty standard outcomes that are needed. So David definitely still knew all of these jobs to be done on a submarine, as well as the outcomes that are needed as one is doing these different jobs. But what he didn't know at all anymore is the how of doing it on this specific submarine that he was now assigned to. And the experience that he went through was, once he liberated himself from trying to think of how everything must be done, he was able to communicate intent, the job to be done and the outcome, and not the how. And that is what he means when he says he enabled his crew to think, that they took accountability and responsibility for the how. His job was making clear everyone understands intent. So it's not about giving instructions. It's not about saying, do this, then do that, then do this, and this is how I want you to do it, and these are the steps involved, and I'm going to check you for these steps. Remember, we're in the knowledge worker century. And it's knowledge workers, organizations and their knowledge workers are invading the future. And we also spoke about in these planning sessions that we're finding these MVPs and these angles of attack. that we need knowledgeable decision makers. The world is too complex for decision makers to understand everything. We need our knowledge workers to figure things out for us. We are solving problems continuously. Again, very similar in the military. When we have communication of intent, such as the following: you take out the bridges, you take out the civil buildings, and you take out the airports, and we're going to meet somewhere in the capital of this country that we're invading within 3 weeks, and this is how you depend upon each other, and this is how we discussed how we depend upon each other. Now, the general doesn't say, you're going to take out the harbors, and you're going to do it in the following way. John is going to progress 20 meters, and then Peter is going to progress 50 meters. You're going to use these type of guns in this type of way. You're going to use these form. It doesn't know all those details. Cannot know all those details. But intent is clear. This is what is expected of you. Others depend upon you. Do you believe this is possible? And that part of the army says, yes, we believe this is possible. It's going to be tough, but we believe it's possible. Good. Go away and make it happen. Of course, if your mission is under threat, that you will not be able to achieve it, contact us immediately. We need to know, because then we need to adapt. But if everything is going to plan, well, maybe not the detailed plan, but at least you're still able to achieve the intent that we've specified for you, then we don't need to know all the details. That is up to you. So there are these different levels of communication of intent, with some points about, what does it mean to achieve this intent. So in this example of display search results based upon basic search criteria, the search terms must match title and job text location, and it must display the results in the following way. It doesn't say how that must be done. It doesn't say you must use JavaScript or Angular or HTML or how the matches are going to be done or whatever. It just says, this is what is needed. And team, I expect you to be able to figure this out. And if you cannot figure this out, let me know quickly if it's going to be a problem in terms of the intent and the timeframes that we've discussed and agreed together. So it's about intent and not about instructions. So how do we go about this? How do we set about doing this efficiently? Having our problem statement, then having our features, and being able to incrementally, break these features down. So we decided that the first feature is a higher risk one we have to tackle now, therefore we need to break it down. We don't necessarily need to break the other ones down yet. Not necessary, we're focusing on this now. Economy of force, massive force, this is what we're focusing on now, simplicity. And also, no plan survives engagement with the enemy. So there's no point in planning all those other detail. Who knows what's going to happen in the first couple of iterations. So we only focus on that now. Then we execute, and as we're executing, we can start preparing for the next mission, the next 2 weeks, the next iteration. And we execute that, and as we do that, we can start preparing for the next mission. And as we progress, we become more certain about our environment and circumstances, and we can get much more confidence as we progress. So how do we go about this? I mean, isn't it tricky to sort of break up these features into sub-features to whatever level is required, and what level is required, and how far should we go? So just a quick example of how to think about this. So let's say the feature that we're interested in this instance is, as a job searcher, I want to type keywords for a job into a search box and then view matching jobs. Fantastic. Okay, so that's the high level intent. And how am I, as the commander of this mission, going to, as product management, whatever the case may be, going to check whether I'm happy? How am I going to check whether the intent has been achieved? Well, I need to go and specify some acceptance criteria, some criteria whereby we can determine whether the intent of this mission has been achieved. And for this instance, it might be something like, again, the search terms. They must be matched against these specific fields, against job title, text, and location, and so forth. That's what they mean, matched against these search terms. One must be able to use Google-type search modifiers like pluses for having to be there and minuses for something that must not be there in terms of the search terms. One must be able to display the results in a certain way, and maybe include all kinds of different fields in the displayed results. and we want to be able to order these results in different ways. So even this, one can attack in an incremental fashion. One could decide to break it down. So the first might be display search results based upon basic search criteria. So in this instance, we're not yet concerned about ordering them. We're not concerned about Google type search modifiers. We can break that down. So we can say there's another piece of this which is about being able to order the results. And then there's yet another piece which is about being able to use the Google search modifiers. And we can specify acceptance criteria for each one of these different missions and say this is our intent and this is how we'll check whether that intent has been achieved. So this is a way of, and what you'll find often is that the acceptance criteria at a certain level basically become the intent of submissions of that higher level mission. And how do we go about agreeing these? How do we go about agreeing intent with our team and getting feedback from our knowledge workers about how to break these things down in a sensible way, that we can attack this in a risk-based, sensible way that also makes sense for the team? Well, let's just chat about that quickly. So at the bottom, that is where we are executing battles. Okay, we agree a battle, and there's a 2-week period, and then we're going to execute these battles. The top part is about planning our next battle, planning our next mission that we need to undertake. Now, one would probably want to do a bit of planning for your mission before you execute the mission. So what you'll normally find is planning is slightly ahead of the execution of missions. But we want these two to be aligned so that we're planning the right stuff at the right time, and should something start going wrong in one of our missions, one of our battles, that we'll get feedback to command so that we can change our potential planning for whatever the next iteration might be. So how do we go about this? So we're gonna standardize how we go about executing battles in this innovation space. Remember economy of force? We want to minimize non-value adding activities in terms of what we're trying to achieve right now. And logistics is a kind of potentially, can have potential waste inside of it. So we want to simplify our logistics as much as possible. And therefore we standardize on starting our battles on a Tuesday, working for 2 weeks, and then ending on the Monday 2 weeks away. And we standardize on that. And that is reducing admin overhead. So everyone can book up their calendars for a year ahead, not having to be concerned about who's doing what which day. Everyone knows that we meet the same time, same place. We have the same kind of input, the same kind of moderation, the same kind of output of these planning sessions that we have to prepare for our missions, our battles. So every second Tuesday, we plan the next mission and then execute it. But to be able, so this just repeats as we progress through these 10 iterations of achieving our MVP. Well, 9 to 11 iterations. Every time that we prepare for a mission, we need to get a view of intent. What roughly is the intent for the next 2 weeks, so that we can go and plan make our detailed battle plan. And once we've done that, well, guess what? After 2 weeks, we need the next intent. What are we trying to achieve in the next mission? So how do we go about making sure that this is smooth, that every 2 weeks we have clear intent which the team understands and agrees to, and are able to plan how they're going to execute the next battle? Well, what we do is, as stated before, planning is always a little bit ahead of execution, which makes sense, logical. But after the Tuesday that we plan the next detailed battle, on the Wednesday, we get together our planning council. And what they do is they discuss how the previous battle went, review what was taken on in this battle, and then start talking about what are the candidates, our candidates for intent for our next battle. Assuming this battle goes well, what should we tackle next? And this is where we discuss risk. Whether it be product or process risk or underlying technical risk, we need to discuss what are the current risks we're facing and what should we tackle next and why. And the output of this planning council, and you need to think about which are the knowledgeable decision makers you need in that planning council to be providing value into what should we tackle next and why. And the output of this planning council is not set in stone. It is a candidate list. Okay, so we prepare this candidate list, which is our potential intent for the next mission, next battle that we're going to undertake. Now, the team is a critical part of being able to achieve this next mission. So we're not going to create this mission battle intent in isolation, because the planning council is probably not going to be the ones who are going to undertake this battle. We need to speak to the actual people that have the detailed skills and knowledge, and make sure that they agree with this battle intent, this mission intent. Okay, so every 2 weeks after our Tuesday starting of the next battle, we have on the Wednesday agreeing the candidate list for the next potential battle. After the Wednesday, on the next day, the Thursday, this candidate list is taken to the team in, let's say, a 1 hour afternoon session to say, team, we know that you are busy with your current 2-week mission, but this is our candidate list of the intent for the next 2 weeks. What is uncertain here? What are your concerns? Do you believe this is feasible? Might it be possible to achieve this in 2 weeks? How is it looking? Should we change things? Are they not clear? Are you concerned? Are there risks that we haven't maybe taken into account yet? Do you have different suggestions about what our intent should be? And we take this into account and it is discussed. And that gives those that focus on planning time to go and panel beat this, to work at this plan for the next 2 weeks. And the next Thursday, a week later, we take it to the team again and say, thank you for your input from last Thursday. This is how we adapted our intent for the next 2 weeks. Does it make more sense now? Do you agree? Does it seem feasible? Is it doable? Is it something you're willing to take on? Does it make sense? And the team then gives their input again, and that gives them still another 2 days to prepare for the next Tuesday, which is the detailed battle planning. So the team then has clarity, those little sort of greenish turquoise colored dots. Those are the ones which now intent has been clarified, team understands and agrees, and we believe this is probably possible within 2 weeks. So on the Tuesday, the team can then take that mission intent and break it down into specific things that they need to do, which is their responsibility. They're accountable for achieving that mission intent, and how they go about it is up to them. How they coordinate is up to them. The only thing that they must do is either complete the mission and meet the intent and the acceptance criteria of the intent, or if they feel they're going to fail, to as quickly as possible give feedback and say, this is not going to work, we're going to fail. And taking that into account, what should we do now? What should we do for the remainder of this 2 weeks? Because we've realized on day 4 that this is not going to work, we're going to fail. And taking that into account, what should we do with the remainder of the 6 days left to us? And of course, we're still having these backlog grooming sessions. That's what we call them, backlog grooming sessions, apologies. So on these Thursdays, they are backlog grooming sessions, because these specifications of intent, our feature backlog, breaking it up into what the next battle is going to be. We're taking that to the team and saying, help us groom this backlog, these features, these statements of intent. Okay, and we do that every Thursday. So this gets you into a good rhythm of being able to think about, where are we in terms of our invasion plan? What battle should we fight next? Getting feedback from your knowledge workers, your team, about is this the right battle to be fought next? And do they understand what the intent is? Are there any concerns and risks? And is it possible to achieve this in this kind of time frame? So this is a joint effort between command and the soldiers, between product management and the team, because knowledgeable decision makers together can achieve great things, but they can't do so in isolation. And this is a good way of setting yourself up to minimize the economy of force, also to maximize, economy of force, and to minimize time wasting. It's setting you up into an efficient rhythm of being able to incrementally invade the specific future for you. Thank you. Enjoyed this lesson with you, and let's look forward to the next one.